start with b because b is the most common type that you will see. So y squared minus 20 over top of y squared minus 4 plus y minus 2 over y plus 2. Okay, and they already gave me my non-permissible values, but I could have figured this out. Okay, so these steps here, we're going to go back to the 4 steps that we wrote out at the beginning. Step 1 was factor your denominators. Okay, so this one right here is already factored, so I'll just put brackets around it because it can't be factored anymore. What about y squared minus 4? Difference of squares, good. So it'd be y minus 2 and y plus 2. So I'm going to leave this one here, like as is. So remember, the numerator is optional, so I'm just going to leave that for now. This one's y minus 2, this one's y plus 2. I still have y minus 2 over y plus 2. Okay, and if you factor it, put those brackets around it. Okay, in this one right here, this first denominator has y minus 2 times by y plus 2. So this other one has the y plus 2. It's missing the y minus 2. So that's where I can multiply that on. But when I do that, it's got to go on the numerator and the denominator. So now they're going to have the same denominator. This is kind of like if you had fractions like 2/3 and you wanted to add it to 1/6. Remember, you used to times this by 2 and this by 2, so they're both over 6. That's exactly what we're doing here. Okay? So step 1 was factor the denominator. Step 2 was multiply the numerator and denominator to get common denominators. Step 3 is distribute out the numerator. I don't need to do that on this first term. It's already I never factored it anyway. So I leave my factors the same here. So the first term doesn't change at all. Okay, but this one, my denominator is now what I want it to be. But my numerator, I have to remember this whole piece is getting times by that new piece. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to distribute that out. Okay? So I will get y squared minus 2y minus another 2y, which some of you might have written as negative 4y, which is okay. And then plus a 4. Okay? Give me a nod if you're okay with what I'm doing. Okay, now we just go back to what we did in the last example. Add all your numerators together because your denominator is common already. So I'm just going to do it, and order doesn't really matter here. Remember, I don't have to distribute out this plus because it's really plus a positive, which is still a positive, plus a negative, which is still minusing this one, still minusing this one, still adding this one. So I don't have to worry about distributing that out. So I can just go term by term. And remember, order that you add things in doesn't matter. 4 plus 5 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 5 plus 4. Okay, order doesn't matter. So I have a y squared here plus a y squared there. So I have 2y squareds. I want them to have it in a nice order because I know I have to refactor it. Let's look at the y's. How many y's do I have in this numerator, this first numerator? I have none. But here I'm going to be adding on, and you might have had negative 4y or negative 2y, negative 2y. Either way, it's still a negative 4y. Okay, let's look at the numerical values. Negative 20 plus 4. How much is that? Negative 16. Good. I put all this over my common denominators. And now I can refactor my numerator to see if it will simplify. Okay? First thing I notice about this one is that it's got a greatest common factor right away. What's the greatest common factor of that one? 2. Good. So I'm going to pull it a 2. I'd have a y squared minus 2y minus 8 over top of those common denominators I had. Okay, and now I'm looking for factors of negative 8 that add together to get 2. Okay, and they would be 2 and 4, and you have more negatives than you do positives because you're going to have that. It has to come out as the negative 2. Okay, I'm going to keep this 2 here the same, but my quadratic that was up here will be y plus my 2 and y minus my 4. So if you are someone that has to do the splitting of the terms to do your factoring, my suggestion is still the same as 6.1 and 6.2. Don't do it within the fraction itself, the rational expression. Do your factor on the side if you need to show more steps, and then just put your results Okay, what cancels here? The y plus 2 is canceled, good. And my final answer, I can leave it factored, y, or 2 times by y minus 4 over y minus 2. I don't have to leave the brackets in the bottom one. In the top one I have to, unless I distribute it out. And if I did that, it'd be 2y minus 8. Okay, non-permissible values, y cannot equal, and you can see from my denominator that's left that it's a plus 2. But also, if you look at the one I crossed off, it would have been a minus 2. So that's why they came up with plus or minus 2.